We begin tonight with Ian Lee with the latest from Minneapolis. Ian, I want to play that soundbite just from a moment ago. President Trump talking on Fox News. Let's listen.
We have Tom Homan there now. We put him in there. He's great. And they met with the governor, the mayor, everybody else, and we're going to de-escalate a little bit. But I will tell you, you look at the numbers, they're doing better than they've done in many years because we took thousands of criminals out of Minnesota.
So that's rhetoric. I know on the ground, Ian, local and state officials want to see changes, demonstrable changes in policy.
That's right. You have this coming from state and local officials. They want this calm to return to their city. And we heard this after calls with local officials and state officials with the president yesterday. The governor coming out saying that they have somewhat of an understanding. The president saying they're in the same wavelength about what needs to happen. When the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, spoke with the president, he said they both agreed that the situation needs to change. The big question is, will that bring calm to the streets of Minneapolis?
What does it look like on those very streets, Ian? Is the apparatus, the visibility, the intensity the same, or has there been, in the president's words, a de-escalation that you can actually see?
You aren't seeing the chaos that we have seen over the course of the past weeks, where you have these protests and immigration officials clashing. Although I need to say last night there was one clash in Maple Grove where protesters believe they found the hotel that Border Commander Gregory Bovino was staying at with other ICE officials. They were protesting there. Local police showed up. There were clashes and there were arrests made. But today, it is pretty calm. You don't see any sorts of massive protests. The only really action you see, if you want to call it action, is at the memorial for Alex Pretti. There are people still going there, leaving flowers, leaving cards, and remembering him.
Another sticking point that the state and local officials have identified, Ian, is for them to be brought in as collaborating investigators with federal officials in not only Alex Pretti's killing, but the killing of Renee Good. Any visibility into where those conversations are or where they might land?
You know, it does seem over the past couple of days, especially with this change in tone from Washington with Tom Homan here, that there could be more cooperation. We do know that a federal judge ruled that the evidence that was gathered in the aftermath of those killings needs to be preserved, and that it cannot be destroyed, possibly so that it will be shared with Minnesota investigators. That has been a huge sticking point for officials here, is that they want an impartial investigation. They don't necessarily trust the federal government to do that. They want their own people at least to be part of those investigations so that they believe what happened will be known and that there can be no, essentially a cover-up, that everything is exposed as to what happened.
Back to that issue of competence and credibility. Ian Lee, thank you so very much. I appreciate it. We turn now to Ed O'Keefe at the White House. Ed, the president's in Iowa. It is a campaign rally event, but clearly he is trying to characterize at least his rhetoric around what has gone on and what will happen in Minneapolis in the future in softer tones.
It sure is. It was an interesting set of comments he made to Fox there, as you suggested, saying that he's going to see to a de-escalation in Minneapolis. When asked about the changes that involve sending Tom Homan to Minneapolis and diverting the attention of the Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem to other things, he was asked, and he said, I don't think it's a pullback, it's a little bit of a change, which is about as much of a concession you're going to get from this president about a mistake made or a need to recalibrate in the wake of a misstep here. So that was notable as well. Also saying that the Customs and Border Protection chief, who's now left or is leaving Minneapolis, is a little bit of an out there guy, he was suggesting, and sometimes that's good. In this case, perhaps not that great. So conceding again that there was certainly a public tone concern in the wake of the shooting, plus, of course, the concerns about that death. And, then there's this conversation about whether or not people should carry weapons Take a listen to part of what he told reporters.
Very, very unfortunate incident. I don't like that he had a gun. I don't like that he had 2 fully loaded magazines. That's a lot of bad stuff.
Oh, that's going to be news to the ears of gun rights organizations who have backed Republican candidates and this president for years. A concern about carrying weapons and magazines if you're doing so legally. In the words of Dana Lausch, the former NRA spokeswoman who was on CBS Mornings today, she is urging administration officials to be a little careful with their words when it comes to this, because while you can lawfully carry, and in this case, Alex Pretti was or had a legal concealed carry permit, she says, look, you can do that. It's, if you go in and try to impede a situation that perhaps, yes, you're violating the law, but there's nothing illegal based on the Second Amendment that stops someone from carrying should they have the legal means to do so.
Ed, very quickly, you keep an eye on the legislative branch and the executive branch because you're deeply experienced in covering both. Katie Britt, who is an important interlocutor on appropriations issues, Senate Republican from Alabama, has talked about possible executive actions that could be taken that could soften some Democratic hostility and move spending bills forward. Any reflections at the White House on the possibility of that to avert a partial government shutdown?
What we know is that the White House is in touch with Republicans and Democrats about averting a shutdown later this week. Nobody likes them in this town, but the Democrats see this as their opportunity to at least hold the White House temporarily accountable for what's transpired. But knowing the Democratic caucus in the Senate as it is constituted right now, the president taking executive actions alone won't be enough to stop their threats of withholding the funding for Homeland Security. They're going to want to do it in legislation that the president would want to sign. So, look, they get back today. They'll meet tomorrow midday, the two sides. They'll sort out to what extent we may be facing some kind of a deadline and a showdown on Friday night, and we'll proceed from there. It's still too soon to say. But we know that the White House, the Democrats and Republicans have been talking to try to avert that with an acknowledgement by Republicans that something has to be done. We should point out, Noem is now scheduled to testify on March 3rd, to the Senate Judiciary Committee, the chairman Chuck Grassley said today. So there she's going to come for a public hearing where there will be the hysterics that we see from the Democrats and the questions they have legitimately about what happened, and then Republicans who will either also criticize or defend her depending on the political mood of the moment. We'll also see whether House Republicans proceed with potential investigations when they get back next week. That could also help take down the temperature. We'll see.
Ed O'Keefe, appreciate it as always. Thank you, sir.